How do you ruin the mystique of one of the most terrifying and unique movie monsters of all time? Ridley Scott seems to have the answer. Okay, I admit I was being a bit sardonic there, but this topic has been in my mind ever since I saw Alien Covenant, the latest installment in the long-running Alien franchise. Ridley Scott is back for the third time following 2012's Prometheus, the prequel that wasn't a prequel that was supposed to reveal more about the space jockey, that bizarre creature in the pilot seat of the derelict Dallas, Kane, and Lambert stumble into in the original Alien. It did that, but not in the most satisfying way, while also creating more questions than existed before. It received a lukewarm reception, with most of the criticism levied towards the hackneyed character writing, which made you constantly question the intelligence of the characters and thus not care all that much about them when bad things started happening to them. Still, it was a technological marvel and did explore some fascinating ideas regarding man's thirst for knowledge of our origins and how that pursuit can lead you into an existential nightmare where the gods are dead and what remains want to kill you and infest your body. Alien Covenant is a direct sequel to Prometheus, but in classic Alien tradition, starts over again with an entirely different setup and crew of characters, with the exception of one survivor, this time the android David, played by Michael Fassbender. But unlike the previous films, this time it feels like a cold, calculated studio decision after all the complaining regarding Prometheus. The grand, sweeping, operatic style of Prometheus has been replaced by the cramped corridors and suspenseful tone we are more familiar with. Gone is the intrigue surrounding the engineers as well, replaced by the Alien of old, a clear attempt by Fox and Scott to bring fans of the franchise back by giving them what they want. And thus we have Alien Covenant, a movie that, as a longtime fan of the franchise, I don't know how to feel about. By the time the credits were rolling, I began to question the value of these prequel films and whether I actually wanted them, and the reason for that is because they exist to answer a question that probably shouldn't be answered. The origin of the alien and its relationship with the space jockey has been one of the longest standing mysteries of the franchise, and naturally fans have long been keen to get answers. The reason Prometheus drew such fervent anticipation was because it was supposedly going to do this by exploring more of these space jockeys, now called engineers. But after decades of wondering what exactly that fossilized thing in the derelict was, finding out it was just a giant blue man in a suit was a pretty colossal disappointment, not only because it just isn't especially inventive from a design standpoint, especially coming off of the design of the irreplaceable H.R. Giger, but because the reveal itself robs the original Alien of some of its mystery. But hey, at least it left the alien itself relatively unscathed. This is not the case with Alien Covenant, a movie that tries to tell a more traditional alien story while continuing on from the threads of Prometheus, and the result is a movie that doesn't know what it is. Is it a philosophical treatise on the nature of creation, or a relatively standard, gory monster movie? It tries to do it both ways, and while it isn't an impossible feat, Covenant doesn't do it especially well. Prometheus has this same problem, but I feel like it was able to mesh the two together a bit more coherently. Here you'll have a scene where a character goes off on their own for no reason other than to get killed, which induces groans from the audience, followed by an extended scene featuring Michael Fassbender teaching himself how to use a flute, using explicitly sexually charged rhetoric like, "You blow, I'll do the fingering." It's not exactly inappropriate given the franchise's sexual undertones, but clashes with Covenant's stereotypical horror structure, which is so stereotypical in fact that it even features a shower scene that recalls trashier horror franchises like Friday the 13th. The first half of Covenant is actually pretty good though. It takes its time to establish the dynamics between the characters, even if they aren't that fleshed out given the larger cast, which merely exists to add to the body count. There is some good suspense building though, and the mystery surrounding what happened to David and Elizabeth Shaw does capture your attention. The first neomorph encounter, an extended scene of ghoulish body horror, is heart-pounding stuff and is the film's finest moment. But then David appears, to which the pace slows down considerably, and all that tension and suspense gives way to exposition and ham-fisted literary references, opening way for the classic xenomorph to make its grand entrance, and we finally get to learn where it comes from. Turns out the alien is the creation of David, the result of his experimenting with the black goo pathogen of the engineers, and it is in this moment that the mystery of the alien dies. Now this was always going to be the case with these prequel films, but I feel like the direction in which Covenant takes the origins of the alien is completely wrong, and not just because I don't like it personally. Objectively, it contradicts everything about the original film. It's right there in the title. Alien. The original was about a chance encounter with a creature we know nothing about. It's strange and otherworldly, a truly alien being in every sense of the word. Not knowing anything about it gave the alien its power to frighten. It was a symbol of the potential horrors that lie in the dark corners of the universe, and what happens when we go nosing around where we shouldn't. By having an android, a creation of mankind, be the harbinger of the alien's creation, the creature is robbed of this subtext completely to the point where the title of the franchise is no longer accurate. The alien is no longer truly alien, as it is deeply connected to mankind via David and the engineers. Even worse is that this knowledge actively alters the subtext of the original classic film. Of course, it is still possible to watch Alien on its own terms, but once you attempt to view it as part of an extended fiction via the 6 films, it is forever altered. In this way, with Covenant, Ridley Scott ruined his own film, which is frankly unbelievable. Had someone told a younger me that the same man who birthed the Alien franchise will go on to undermine it, I would have never believed it. Now, all of this could be forgiven if Covenant then went on to make the alien a truly menacing and scary monster, but the film underutilizes it to the point where you feel like Ridley Scott is just going by the motions and giving the audience what it wants, while at the same time giving them the finger for not liking Prometheus. All of the action with the alien, to which there's very little, is filmed in such a lethargic and uninspired way. I was never on the edge of my seat, never fearing for any of the characters' lives, and never fearful of the alien. It displays no sense of intelligence or cunning, it just runs around mindlessly like a rabid dog attacking everything in sight, and so the characters defeat them with very little effort. Perfect organism this is not. The last 15 minutes becomes an uninspired bullet points remake of Alien, complete with tracking cameras, dark corridors, and airlocks, only with zero tension and suspense, and so you get an Alien film with no memorable scenes featuring the creature. For as disliked as Alien Resurrection and Alien vs. Predator are, and in the case of the latter rightfully so, at least they had a handful of memorable scenes featuring the alien. Covenant has nothing, save for a bizarre birthing scene where the alien chestburster mimics David. And it really displeases me to be saying this because I was really looking forward to Covenant. I was intrigued to see how it would both pick up after Prometheus and bring in the traditional alien we know and love. The film's premise, where a colonization mission stumbles upon paradise only to encounter different variations of the alien, had so much potential, but it's squandered by a script that doesn't have time to develop because it feels obligated to shoehorn in uninspired scenes with the alien. Alien Covenant should have been better than this, especially coming from Ridley Scott. When you compare the razor sharpness of Alien and the bluntness of Covenant, it's hard to believe they both come from the same director, and it reveals just how different movies are made now compared to 40 years ago. You see, Alien Covenant is as much a remake of Alien as it is a prequel or sequel. Structurally, it has the same plot as Alien, but within the story and mythos of Prometheus. In hindsight, this isn't surprising in the slightest, as not quite remakes are how studios like to continue on big franchises nowadays. Like Jurassic World and The Force Awakens, Covenant is an original new entry in an older franchise that needed rejuvenation, but structurally and tonally a remake, a precisely packaged amalgamation of everything that came before, giving you a dose of nostalgia so as to remind you of the things you loved about the earlier films before hopefully doing new and creative things in the sequel. It's as close to remaking Alien as you can get without actually doing it, while still continuing on the threads set up by Prometheus, which, even though I have my issues with Covenant, I'm more than happy to take as an alternative to outright remaking the classic original film. Alien Covenant is what happens when you make an Alien movie in today's more studio-mandated, corporate-controlled film industry. This was an attempt to bring Alien fans back after the backlash from Prometheus, while not outright abandoning it, instead steering abruptly in a new direction. You can feel the tone clash, and this is ultimately what makes Alien Covenant feel so slapped together. It's actually kind of a shame Scott wasn't able to continue down the path he originally envisioned for the prequels, which he has been very candid about. Prometheus had many issues, and fans certainly made them well known, but with Covenant it appears the only complaint that registered was the lack of aliens. All of the same problems that plagued Prometheus are present in Covenant. It feels like it was made with a thorough misunderstanding of the complaints levied at Prometheus, thinking that we just wanted more aliens and nothing else. No, we wanted a film worthy of those that came before, specifically Ridley Scott's own Alien. Now, despite all of my complaints, it would be foolish of me not to attempt to engage with the prequel films on their own terms, and as a standalone series, outside of the original Alien films, I must admit that there is much to enjoy in Scott's prequels. While not necessarily my preferred origin story of the alien, I can appreciate what Ridley is trying to do and say with these movies. Its blend of science fiction, gothic and cosmic horror, and mythology is unquestionably unique. There is something to be admired for just how kooky and weird Scott's films are, even if the narrative construction is rather sloppy and cliched. They deal with issues of faith and the horrors you meet when faith drives you to seek the higher questions only to be met with the cold, unforgiving reality of vengeful gods and their demonic creations. Scott seems to be highlighting how dangerous faith can be in an unflinching, apathetic universe. Characters of faith, such as Elizabeth Shaw, Peter Weyland, and Captain Oram, all meet horrific and grotesque ends when searching for answers to the higher mysteries. In the case of Covenant, you have the religious Oram, who decides to land on paradise with faith that it will be better than the world they were originally going to settle on, but it turns out to be a nightmare world of dead gods, terrifying monsters, and a malevolent AI experimenting with the alchemy of creation. This AI, David, is the devil, our immortal creation that looks down on both us and our creators, as even the engineers aren't immortal like he is. Left alone to his own devices for 10 years, he abuses the weaponry of the gods to create the perfect killing machine against mankind. Honestly, it's pretty compelling stuff on its own. It even thematically complements Alien 3, which also deals with ideas of religion and faith. The alien is a devilish creation that both the engineers and David revere, another spoke in the wheel of creation that goes back countless millennia. It's an interesting direction to take the Alien series. Whether it ought to go in that direction is a whole nother question of its own, and how you feel about it depends on your own personal tastes. Personally, for myself, I never needed the origins of the alien to be explained to me, as the fun was always sitting down, considering it on your own, and discussing theories with other fans. The prequels take away from that fun, and all in an effort to lead up to a movie that is basically a haunted house in space. It just doesn't fit to have these grand sweeping prequels that ask big questions serve as the backstory to a very small scale movie about 7 people trying to survive a random and unfortunate encounter with a deadly alien creature. Alien is a perfect film because it is so simple. It needs no backstory and never has, which makes it all the stranger that Ridley Scott insists it does. I'm not necessarily against exploring the space jockeys or the origins of the alien, but there is a subtle way of doing it that requires a deft hand, and I don't think the prequels, particularly Covenant, accomplish that. It insists on bridging a gap to Alien that never existed. These movies could have just been sequels and it wouldn't change anything. Essentially, Alien is being tarnished when it doesn't need to be, and this more than anything is what makes it such a disconcerting film for me. It will be interesting to see where the next film goes, and I am actually intrigued to see what happens. I'll be waiting with bated breath to see where the Alien franchise goes from here, and I hope with all my heart that one day it can bounce back and deliver a truly great film worthy of the genre-defining classics that came before. Thanks for watching. If you've seen Alien Covenant, what do you think? Are you looking forward to seeing what happens in the next film? Should we get it? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to share with those you feel might enjoy it as well. Finally, subscribe to Medias Res for more videos about Alien and a host of other topics going forward. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.